It's me, Adam Culver, talking with Dustin Ransom about his new record, Frontiers. The record sounds to me like a different phase or era than phases. Do you feel like it was in any way a reaction to your previous work, your new record?
Yeah, in some ways, yes. I think that a lot of what I wanted to. The reason why the record is called Frontiers is I wanted to go into places that maybe I knew about it from an artistic, personal standpoint, but maybe had been afraid to go into prior to this moment.
Sure.
And in some ways, it's almost like and this makes sense. It's like a matured version of my Phases record. Phases, which I love that record, but in some ways, I was still kind of caught in trying to find my voice. I was also sort of still kind of stuck in like Nashville singer-songwriter headspace, which is not something I really consider myself. And, I've always had, I remember being in high school and I would make these lists of like, if I can make a record, here's the stuff I would want to do on it.
Oh, yes.
And it'd be like, I want to send a vibraphone through an amp, through a delay, through all this crazy shit.
And you're writing this down at what age are you?
I was like 16, 17. It's like I wanted...
In your notebook at school? Is this when you're
I'm
working
in my
on this?
bedroom. Yeah. Sure. But it was like, I want to make something where there's no rules. It's not necessarily conformed to a period or whatever, even though I may use certain things from what's going on in music around me or what happened years ago or whatever. But it is definitely a departure. And I would say, if anything, I mean, man, maybe one of the best, and I really try not to like internalize compliments too hard anymore. Sure. But one of the best compliments I have heard was from my wife, who listened down to the whole thing and was like, I love every single thing on that. That sounds like you all the way across the board.
Well, that's exactly it. It sounds to me like you, an individual, very individual, particular person, Dustin Ransom, but put into music, and things that you say, I feel like in your real life have gotten into the lyrics. At multiple points throughout the record. We had a conversation.
I was going to go, I know exactly what you're going to say, and this is so good. Go ahead.
Well, we had a conversation about when you were sitting down to make the record, and you literally had like in your mind, okay, I think I want a song that starts the record out like this, and then you wrote it almost in order. Is that right?
Oh, yes, and that's actually different where I was going to go. But
Let's go to your place too.
Well, okay, so that is true. Like I wanted to make a record that would be experienced like watching a movie or watching a TV show, like front to back. Like there's recurring themes and lyrics and all this stuff, and I really love. I mean, I kept telling, when people would ask me like, well, what do you think it sounds like? And I would say, I'm making like this atmospheric, funky, dark side of the moon. Ooh. Like that's what I'm trying to make. Yeah. And it's not as dark, nearly as Dark Side of the Moon. It's much more optimistic and vulnerable, as opposed to like isolation and I'm going nuts in an insane asylum and so on and so forth.
So it's Bright Side of the Moon.
Bright Side of the Moon. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Bright Side of the Moon.
There we go.
I don't know. What am I talking about? But no, what I was going to say was that you had told me about something that you were doing in your lyrics, which was you got tired of like trying to be so super poetic with them, and you were just literally taking phrases from your phone, or like what you would text people, or what you would say to people normally, and like try and put those into lyric form. And I was like, man, I love that. And so there are numerous instances on this record where it's like, these are things that I would say to other people, or I would say to myself in my head or whatever, just on a natural occurring basis. And it's like, well, yeah, this is how people talk. Yeah. There's some poetry in there. There's some metaphor and whatever, but it's like, it's a balance. And man, those are some of the like the moments I'm proudest of on the record, where I go back and listen to them and like I get moved hearing them. So I'm going, oh my God.
This is something that I wanted to ask you. We've talked about like making music that you yourself wanted to like put on and listen to. And this is something that I've been chasing for a while. I think all musicians should be, but maybe don't do it actively. Now that you have made Frontiers, and when you listen to it, do you have a particular feeling after it runs through? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, yeah, what is it for you?
So I listened to it the other day with my wife. She hadn't heard it before,
Whoa,
all the
you
way
hung
through.
on to this for a minute.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. She hadn't heard the whole thing all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And we listened to it on a drive on our way to a hike, and we pulled in to the place we were going to go hike literally as the record ended. And I mean, I told her it was like, it's this feeling of like utter completion. Like, what's a good emotion word around this? Like I felt very moved after hearing it. And so did she. She had the exact same response. It was like that's really something.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this to be self-aggrandizing. It was something where I had, and we've talked about this before, like hearing your own songs, hearing my songs in the room with someone else changes the way that I hear them. And to listen to these songs that trace a lot of this really intense stuff that I've been dealing with internally for the past few years with my wife, who has been there in the middle of it, to be able to listen to all this stuff all the way down, and for us to both have this mutual, like, whoa, it's just this kind of cathartic. I mean, that's what it was. It was very cathartic. It was very moving. This very deep sense of like having just witnessed something really profound. And it was like, oh, we're witnessing somebody coming out of their shell, which is me.
Right.
You know, it's literally the sound of me being able to. It's funny. I keep talking about how it's like I'm exploring something new, but in a sense, I'm really just returning to something that I've been afraid to put out for a long time.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
When the record has a certain wildness and freakiness, and there is, you know what I mean? There is.
Yeah.
And then there's also like some just really genuine sort of heartfelt sentiments, and the humor part of it. That's something that to me is a huge part of you.
Yeah.
And has maybe not been in all of your songs previously. I definitely hear it in some of these, particularly, what is it? Everybody Knows Everything.
Oh, yeah.
Is a funny song, also a real song, obviously, for you.
Yeah.
You're hitting on some themes with social media, which is
Yes.
something that you hit and quit, at least for a time, social
Right.
media itself. When you tackle that, and then the end of it is you kind of doing some spoken word stuff, and I was like, oh,
man.
Dustin's talking now.
Yeah.
He's saying some things, what's this going to be? And it did not disappoint.
Oh,
folks,
yeah.
Folks obviously need to hear the record
Yeah.
for the best
Man.
part. But yeah, like as you insert those parts of yourself into music, did it feel natural? Did it feel normal to be like, hey, this is going to be funny now?
Oh,
this
yeah.
part?
The things that I said, the things that you're referring to, which if you haven't heard the record, I'm not going to give away, but
I know.
the things that I said in that were just like, it was literally in the moment. Like those were it was just me being stupid. But I mean, it's not being stupid. It's like, that's me. I'm being silly. I'm being funny. I'm being ridiculous in all these positive ways. And it was just kind of like, and that song in particular, I'm kind of like, it's sarcasm at our social media culture, and just we care about stuff that we really don't need to care about. And yet throughout the song, you'll hear me kind of turn that in on myself, where it's like, I do the same crap. I've driven home from social events because my phone was going to die.
I know. When I heard that lyric, I was like, personally, I've done that too.
Yeah.
I am sort of like beholden to these things, maybe more so than even I had thought.
Right.
I mean, and talking about those things, you mentioned, I'll save the particular reference, but you mentioned some like sort of modern day things.
Yeah.
Some things that like, if you listen to it in 20 years, you'll be like, well, what's that exactly?
What's that about?
But that's also true of a lot of songs that you probably love by Prince or whoever.
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't, honestly, man, a lot of this record was just kind of saying, I don't really care. Like, I just want to make what I want to make, and I want to say what I want to say right now about what's going on with me right now. And even songs that deal, there's one song that very specifically deals with gun violence and deals with the political leadership in our country and so on and so forth. I just wanted to speak it from my experience.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there's too much hawking around of we're right and you're wrong and so on and so forth. And I even say it's a song called Enough. At the end of it, it's like, I don't know. I don't know the answers. I don't know who's right or who's wrong or whatever it is. But all I know is like, I want to be able to go to a show at whatever venue and walk out alive.
Yeah.
I don't want to get killed trying to enjoy myself by somebody who's crazy and has a gun.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, I think you and I both would like to wake up tomorrow and not be dead.
Well, it stops being preachy or didactic because it is just about like how you felt
It's
going
how
to a
I
show.
feel, man.
Yep.
It's not waving some flag for a side or anything. Like I don't align myself with the political party,
Right.
for these very reasons. It's just like I don't really give a shit. I just want to like survive and come home to see my family and live another day and go from there.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's like basic human experiences.
Right.
You know?
Right. So, Dustin, when you mention making this record, Frontiers, and not caring as much or just saying, I don't care,
Right.
what were these things that you were caring about before that were maybe weighing you down in some way?
Sure. I was concerned about impressing people. I was concerned about making sure I didn't say certain things or even certain words for fear of that this person or this group of people is going to get offended or so on and so forth. And I don't mean that in the sense that I'm saying things that are hurtful or in ill-intentioned or whatever. It's just more of, there's one of the goofiest and also, like, in my opinion, one of the funkiest songs on the record. It's just the same lines over and over again, and I say fuck in it. I say fuck like 5 or 6 times in the whole song. And I know that there may be certain people who don't really like that word, and so be it. That's okay. In this context, it's kind of silly. It's like the song is Don't Need Drugs.
Yeah.
And, I say, I don't need no drugs to blow my mind, don't need to get fucked up so I can have a good time. Like,
Yeah.
And I referenced this to a few people, and I was like, I don't want to get messed up. Like, that's not what people say.
And you
when it
wouldn't
comes
even
to
say
this.
that.
I wouldn't even say that.
No.
It's like people don't say that unless they're like, oh, I can't say that word. I'm
Yeah.
going to get in trouble.
Right.
What, by who? I don't know, but
I
somebody,
know.
this inner critic voice in our head. But it's just like, man, this is me. Like, this is who I am. I'm not saying that I am the word fuck. I'm just saying that, like, I am fuck.
You might want to own that.
I'm gonna get that tattooed on my forehead. I'm gonna make a bumper sticker. It's kind of like a Forrest Gump situation.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, I am fuck. That's what it is.
I don't need no drugs to blow my mind. Don't need to get fucked up so I can have a good time. I don't need no drugs to do what I do. Don't need to get wasted. Well, how about you? I don't need no drugs to blow my mind. Don't need to get
I feel like, so one of the things that I've always wanted to hear, as much as you would want to do it, is you being kind of let off the chain musically on your own records, because you have these moments when you play live, and you have these moments, I'm sure, when you're playing live with other people, doing your own shows and working on stuff with me. Even you've done it, but then sometimes in your own songs, it's more like a regular, you said, singer-songwriter sort of structure. This record, Frontiers, not that way. There are some diversions where you go off on a musical tangent, and you just let that thing ride. Did you have a moment where you're like, should I cut this? Should I make this shorter? And then you decided
There were only a few moments where I was like, I need to maybe trim this thing. Like, for instance, the intro to Don't Need Drugs was maybe 30 seconds longer than it is on the record. And I was like, I don't need this much craziness in here. Like, I'm going to take this out. Like, I want to get to the point.
Yeah.
You know, let's just get there. And, but man, honestly, well, and I would say too, there are 2 songs, Miles of Truth, the first one, and a song called, It's Enough.
Yeah.
They both have fade outs in them, and it's just kind of a jam thing. But I was like, I don't want this to go forever. I want this to just, you get a taste of what's happening, and let's move on.
Yeah.
So, but well, actually, there are more than that kind of do that. But those are the 2 that come to mind where I was like, let's just close this up. You know, one thing I thought about the other day is that there's no point on this record. Well, I take that back. There's one point on the record where I actually solo on anything, and it's the guitar solo in I Believe in Our Love.
Yes.
That's the only solo that I actually played on the record. Now, my friend Tyler Summers played a bunch of sax solos on Don't Need Drugs. My friend Vinny Shashelsky played a trumpet solo in Miles of Truth. But there aren't, like, solo breaks. There's instrumental breaks on here, but, like, I just didn't want to do that. Like, I thought about this later. It's like, maybe that's just not where I was, other than that one song.
Yeah.
It's like, that just made sense. But it was just more of like, this record was much more about like visceral groove and atmosphere and mood and all that stuff. And I'm much more moved by that. I for the most part, I'm much more moved by that than just a ripping solo. But I mean, the solos I love for the most part are not very crazy. I mean, one of my favorite musical moments of all time is David Gilmour's guitar solo at the end of "Comfortably Numb" by Pink Floyd. Or, I mean, I know it's been played a zillion times, but man, I still get chills every time I hear the end of "Stairway to Heaven."
Oh, I was wondering what you were going to say there. Yeah,
every single time, every single time I get chills when I hear that. The end of that song. Man.
It's amazing. You're obviously a record guy. You love records. People talking about modern music biz, maybe they would say just do a bunch of singles. You made a record because you wanted to make a record.
I stopped caring.
Yeah.
You know?
You're serious.
I'm serious. It's not like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to stop caring. It was more of like, man, I just want to make a record because I love records.
Yes.
I love these experiences. I don't want to read just one page out of a book. I want to read the whole book.
Yeah.
I want to hear what somebody has to say in numerous capacities, in different moods, different atmospheres. Like, I don't know. That just appeals to me a lot more than just throwing out a bunch of random songs and, seeing what Spotify playlist I can get on.
Yeah, well, and the record is very much a record. It starts with the theme. There's the Frontiers theme, which is like an instrumental thing, and to me feels very cinematic, very film-like. Was that something you were shooting for on purpose?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I love it. The thing that it reminded me of, and it doesn't necessarily sound like it, but it just sets you up for this experience in the way like Daft Punk made a soundtrack for Tron. And they have a kind of intro song where it's like, all right, here's the general little feel, and then you go into the actual record.
Sure.
Because track 2, Garden, has a sound at the beginning of it that could have opened the record
just
as well.
Honestly, before I put that intro on it, that was going to be the sound of the record, the sound of the opening of the record. And that sound is, I have this little electric air organ that plays, that's part of the sound that you hear kind of padding through the song.
So nice.
And it's literally just me turning the thing on and letting the motor in it kick on, and then I start playing it. And I was like, I love hearing stuff like that, man.
Oh, so you're hearing it come on at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not a fade in. That's just how the instrument
that's literally
sounds.
how it sounds when you turn it on. And then I played it, and then it kept going. And you hear me turn it off at the end.
Wow.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it gives people a feel of like being in the studio around for that creative process and sort of the wild looseness that in the moment you're like, should I leave it? And then for listeners, I know those will be some of my favorite things where I'm like really kind of locked into those moments.
Yeah, every person that I've played that for has been like, man, that is wow.
Yeah.
Like I love how I feel when I hear that. It's like a movie. It's like, here we go. We're starting something.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like, here's a song, and here's a song, and here's a song, and here's a song. It's like, oh, crap. Like, you're taking me somewhere.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Yeah, and so that tune, Garden, it ends with a couple of lines where you're saying, what do I know? And I feel like that's a lyric that can be taken a couple different ways.
Sure.
Just saying, well, I don't really know anything, but also maybe it's a search inside for what are the things that you actually know. Do you feel both?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think I think that's where I was when I wrote those words.
Yeah.
That's one of the most metaphorical songs on the whole record. Yeah, it was just, I mean, a lot of the record also centers, well, not also, a lot of the record centers around me just deconstructing a lot of things in my life, old mental and emotional patterns, beliefs and faith. I mean, I don't believe the same things that I used to believe, but I believe certain things about them now that are different than they used to be, and I'm in a much more authentic place with them than I used to be. And that song kind of sets up a lot of the themes on the record where it's like, I really have a lot going on inside of me that feels very true and deep and all of that stuff. And at the same time, I can't prove anything to you. You know, it's like my experience means nothing to you in the sense that it wasn't your experience. I can tell you about my like if I go to a concert, I can tell you all about the concert, but that's me telling you about the concert. You didn't experience the concert.
Right.
But for me to tell you, Adam, it was the best freaking concert that's ever happened on the face of the planet, you'd kind of be like, well,
All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
That's great.
I missed it all.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I guess I missed it.
Oops.
Crap. But it's like, it would be crazy for me to be like, and now listen, the rest of your life, you need to believe that the concert that I went to, that I experienced, was the best concert that's ever happened. You need to believe that. Like, that's crazy.
Do you feel like
Does anybody catch on to what I'm saying?
I think I follow. Did you feel a need or compulsion to convince people of things through most of your life, to sell people on yourself, or to, you know what I mean? Did you have this?
I spent a lot of my life trying to convince people on a version of me that wasn't real.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of energy cultivating a lot of different versions of myself, a lot of false selves. And then I would get upset when somebody would call one of those false selves out. It's like, well, fuck you. I've spent so much time putting this thing together.
I worked on that.
I worked on this
I
thing.
made that guy.
Damn it. What the hell? What is this? I spent so much energy and years and years and years, but it's like, I started to realize anything that I start to defend like that, I probably don't really believe in it that much.
Right. If you feel the need to defend
if I believe that I need to defend something, then I probably don't have a lot of trust in it to begin with. It's probably not real.
Sure.
And so that process came out in a lot of these songs.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're going after is I think what you're sensing is exactly what I was going after, where it was just like, yeah, I don't need to waste my energy anymore being somebody I'm not. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean I need to. That isn't when I say somebody I don't need to waste energy being somebody I'm not. That doesn't mean that who I am is rude or terrible or whatever it is. It just means that, like, I can be as loving and as kind and as patient and compassionate with myself and with others as possible, and they still may not like it. They still may not like me, and at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. So I can just, well, all right, man, thanks.
Right.
See ya.
Well, there's a note, it might still be in this room, that says, what is it, other people's opinions of me are none of my effing business?
I have my friend Al, who used to be my counselor, told me a story about a woman who told him, he asked this woman who was kind of leading him through a therapy group, well, we've been doing all this work, but what are people going to think when we get out of here? And this woman leaned forward, this 70-something-year-old woman, this little woman just kind of leaned forward and said, Al, what other people think about you is none of your fucking business.
That's where it's from.
Yeah.
That's so good. I think about that constantly, and I saw it over here a while back.
I mean, it's absolutely true. It's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't matter.
Huh.
So just stop putting my energy into it. Like, I'm enough. Everything's here.
Yeah.
I don't lack anything.
Enough is one of the words that comes up on the record multiple times.
Uh-huh.
The concept of enough, having enough, being enough. When these things recur, did they happen by accident, or do you think, well, I definitely want to hit that theme again so people get it?
I mean,
know what
you saying that right now is like, oh, wow, maybe they do.
I think they do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. I may have made that that may have been intentional per song or even per lyric, but no, I mean, I would say the scope of the record is just learning how to respect. I have a friend of mine and I who we've been coming up with like new affirmations for ourselves around this type of stuff that sort of like undo all these old false ways of being and thinking. And one of the ones that we came up for me was I love, accept, and respect everyone I have been, and I choose to be my true self today.
Wow.
That's enough. Because all those other false selves, I'm still here, man. They got me somewhere, but they just don't serve me anymore.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about, the idea of being enough, it's like there is enough right here. Like I'm enough.
Yeah.
I don't need extra past this point. I don't need someone else to validate the fact that I'm valuable. You don't need someone else to tell you you're valuable. If you believe it. And when we stop believing it, then we're just kind of off in la la land.
Sure. Well, and we've talked before about sort of the way that you do music and the way that you will play. You can play everything on a song, write it, produce it, mix it, everything, like sort of front to back. And that sort of, and particularly your relationship with the word genius, is something that other folks would say or whatever, and I would throw it around here and there. But now this record seems lighter in a lot of ways, less burden. There's more of a weightlessness to it. I think of a song like "Except You" that just seems like
oh man,
airy and up there and just nice. It's fun. It's like a pleasant place to be.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to do anything more than it does. What's that like for you making a track like that?
Man, I mean that song and a song called "What You're Missing." Like I get emotional virtually every time I listen to those songs. For that very reason, it's like I'm hearing myself not need to prove anything to anybody.
And this is new for you to hear yourself that way.
To hear myself that way. I mean, I distinctly have memories of mixing that. I mean, that song was the hardest one to mix, "Except You," because I wanted to get it right. Like I knew what I was hearing, and it was exactly what you're describing. It's just like there's this expansiveness, this cathartic thing to it that I was feeling. I mean, I remember writing that song and being like, oh my God, I've been trying to say this for a long time and I've been afraid to.
Yeah.
Except you break my heart in the best way. Except you tear me apart and you put me back together little by little. It's you when I'm out of my mind. It's you when there's nowhere to hide. It's you.
There's space in the song, and not just sonically, but it feels like the idea of holding space for things to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It was okay. I mean, again, that's an I don't know moment in that whole song. I don't know what I necessarily believe all the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm enough, right?
Right.
I'm good enough. It's okay. It's okay to question stuff. But there's definitely a weightlessness. That's a great word. There's a weightlessness to a lot of the songs where it's just like, man, this is just what I am. I'm not trying to prove something to myself. I'm not trying to prove something to somebody else. It's just these are songs that came out. And if that means that there's some technicality, musical virtuosity and stuff, so be it. But like that's for me,
right?
That's not to impress you. Right. I mean, it's okay if you're impressed, but like whatever. I just enjoy doing it.
Right. Are you somebody like? Do you think of? I talk to a lot of artists who will talk about making records as its own kind of therapy.
Yeah.
Now, is it that for you? Because I know that at points your relationship with music maybe wasn't as healthy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. This record was arguably the most therapeutic music making process I've ever been part of. I mean, that may sound obvious, but it's not. I think there are records that people make all the time just to, get on playlists or to impress a certain demographic or whatever it is. And for me, it was like I listen back to this and I'm going, man, like I'm hearing myself work some stuff out in it and being okay with stuff, having some open-endedness to it, and figuring out the best ways to say things as far as where I'm at, where I was at the moment, where I'm at now, all that stuff. There's a lot of things on this record, and even on the last record that are very evergreen. I go back to them. You even asked me this question in the last interview that we did for my Faces record. Are there songs that you kind of self-reference later on, like you almost look to them for wisdom? Like you go back to them, and I was like, God, man, absolutely. And that's not self-aggrandizing. It's like I'm in a really good, safe, like true, authentic place when I'm in the middle of doing this stuff. Even sometimes when I may try and sound like somebody else or whatever it is. That wasn't really the case on this record. But I do remember a few songs on the last record, like I kind of sang like somebody else or had that thought in my head, but I went, man, this is the best I can do right now. I give whoever I was in 2017 a break.
Sure.
It's like he was doing the best he could with what he had. And now he's learned a lot, and now here I am. So let's roll with that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now, are there perspective flips within the songs? Meaning that like the verse might be directed to someone and the chorus is like at something else or at yourself. I guess what I'm asking is if some of these songs are instructive to you or aspirational to you in the lyrics. Do you know what I mean,
Both.
Matt? Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm kind of scanning through the lyrics real quick.
That's a
to
big job.
reference.
Yeah. Let's see which one.
I would. Oh, wow.
I think maybe it happens more than once, but there's one where I feel like, to me, it seems like you were talking to another person in the verse, and then the chorus, it's almost like it's coming back to you, is what it sounds like. To me.
Actually, the one that I immediately think of is "What They're Missing," which
Yeah, that might be it.
that one is basically me. If I walk through the song, the first verse is me sort of affirming where my wife and I are in our lives. We have a son now. We've set a lot of boundaries that have been healthy. You know, and also realizing how difficult both of those things can be, let alone trying to maintain a marriage. But then I'm affirming to her that I love you as you are, even when I kind of fuck that up a lot. And then the next verse is sort of me coming back and talking about my own story and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, where I sort of lived my life through the expectations of the unhealthy expectations of other people. And it goes back into the chorus where I've turned it around, where it's my wife being able to say, like, man, I got you. Like, I'm here with you. So don't believe any of that old shit.
Sure.
So if that's what you're referring to, that's one that immediately strikes me as like perspective shift, but I'm kind of saying the same thing in numerous ways.
Yeah. Yep. And there are some cool moments on the record that have a story feel to them. I noticed that, obviously, Devil's Table at the end has got some story to it. I also noticed it in Everybody Knows Everything, where it's like you said, you're talking about all the crazy stuff with social media and phones and whatnot. And at the end, you're the one that's going home because your phone died.
Yeah.
Where it's like the joke can be on you, too.
Yeah. And there's another reference in there somewhere where I kind of turn it in on myself, where it's like, I'm just as guilty as this as anybody.
Yeah.
It's just like there's this amazing quote from Bono in the At the End of the World Bill Flanagan book, the book that chronicles them on the Octone Baby Zoo TV Zooropa tour, and he says something along the lines of like, here, actually, let me get the quote.
Nice.
I'm not a good direct quoter.
Yeah,
so
I
tend
will
to paraphrase stuff.
get in the ballpark or the parking lot.
Yeah,
I'm trying to pull a quote.
Oh, let's see here. Let's find it. 1, 2, 3. All right, here it is. Let me see. Here we go. Okay. So this is Bono. To describe the present age is to challenge it. Isn't that really what artists are supposed to do? It's not their job to solve the problem. It's their job to describe the problem. And part of the description is to realize that this is very attractive and to admit one's own attraction to it, right?
Wow.
So the job is to describe what's going on, describe the attention, and be generous enough to not wave your finger at it as it's going by. You know?
Yeah.
I used to think I did, and maybe this came out in some earlier songs, but like, I used to think that for me to speak about what's going on in the world and in my life and all that stuff, I needed to be sort of combative with it and push up against stuff. And there may have been a time for that, but honestly, I'm much more content to just talk about, again, this is how I experience gun violence. I'm not going to go on record and say I have the answer for something that is extraordinarily complicated.
Sure.
Other than just, I don't want to get shot. Period.
Yeah.
Right. And I really hope that there are people the people that are in the trenches figuring out that stuff have enough sense of their own self-worth and care for themselves and other people to make wise decisions around that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I hope.
The album sonically to me sounds really hi-fi. Like it sounds incredible, and
Thank you.
I feel like I can hear every bit of it, and I'm hearing it, you know, with with sort of like your ears in a way, to where it's like this is how you hear these instruments and play them and produce them. It's from one source, and I love the overall effect of it. Did you have sonic goals for the record?
I did. Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted this thing to sound as freaking good as any of my favorite sounding records could sound.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time over the years really perfecting my engineering, especially perfecting my mixing. And I don't say perfecting and like I've got it. I just honing it in.
Yeah.
I've gone through courses. I've shadowed people. I've just done all sorts of stuff to really get this thing dialed in.
Yeah.
To where when I hear it, it's like, man, let me say this.
Yeah.
When I was growing up and learning songs, like I would sit down with records and I had this little keyboard that I could record all the instruments. Like I could record numerous instruments on top of themselves. I could multi-track record inside this one little keyboard. And when I would listen to records, it was like I was picking out every single part. And I just like instinctively, my ear grew so, I could hear anything.
Sure.
I could discern frequencies. Like if I wanted to, like I used to transcribe stuff all the time. Like musical notation.
Wow.
And
this is as a kid?
As a kid,
Yeah.
like 15, 16, 17. Okay. I mean, I would do it all the time because I wanted to learn. And so it was like I learned how to tune in to like, okay, where's the kick sit? Where's the snare sit? Where's the hi-hat sit?
Wow.
And even stuff in like when I would transcribe piano parts, it was like, okay, so I know that this guy also, or this woman, there's everybody's welcome.
All the above.
All the above.
Yeah.
Whoever's playing this instrument, they have 10 fingers just like I do. They're playing on a piano just like I have. So that means that unless they have giant hands, which some people do, they're going to be playing stuff that I can play too.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be able to hear really clearly what they're doing. And so when I make records, and from an engineering sonic mixing standpoint, I want whoever listens to it to be able to pick out everything in it.
Yep.
And I don't mean that it needs to be super clean necessarily. I just want it to be clear.
Yes.
There's a difference. Like Steely Dan records are clean, and I love Steely Dan, but they're not very gritty, and they don't necessarily have a lot of energy in them. You put on a Steely Dan record compared to like, I don't know, a Black Keys record, and it's going to sound completely different.
Sure.
Right? But you can still make stuff out. I wanted like the in-between and then beyond that.
Yeah.
Like I wanted something that was clean and crisp, but I also wanted to have like extra aggression on it, and it just kind of, it hits you hard, but it's like, I hear everything.
Yes. Like Miles of Truth and I Believe in Our Love, as we get into like the bangers on the record, they just hit so hard, the low end to me. And it's not like it's like a painful sort of onslaught. It's really pleasant, but there are points in it like where you'll have an intro of a tune, and then we get into the actual like guts of it, and it gets even bigger than I imagine it could get.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I love that feeling, being like, oh, now I'm in a new area that I didn't expect to be musically or sonically with your record. Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
It's just like, I don't know, there's something to listening to the entire thing together. I have been wearing the thing out. I'm in love with the record.
Thanks,
I didn't want to make this a whole just compliment session, but it is so fascinating to dig in with you further what's happening kind of behind the scenes as you make this. The record closes with Devil's Table. And I thought, Devil's Table, are we heading to a Revelation type of ending here or what?
There are some biblical allusions in that.
There are, and that's a part of your history, right?
It is. It is. I mean, I didn't grow up in a religious home, but I kind of fell into I was looking for an identity because I was just told I needed to be everybody else.
Yeah.
I needed to be somebody else other than who I actually was in order to survive. And so one of those things, it was like, well, I haven't really tried religion, and I really want to be accepted. And there's this group of people at my high school that, you know, seem to really like me, and they all go to this youth group together. So I guess I'll start going. And it was like, I believed. And look, I'm so grateful for that because it allowed me to get to this place half a life later where I'm like, I believe what I believe now. And it was the jumping off point. It was the baby food for my spiritual diet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That was well put.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm looking for baby food on Frontiers 2. I want there to be a song called
Yeah, baby food. That's it. It's just 40 minutes long, and it's me chewing.
Oliver's going to love it.
Yeah, that's my son. Honestly, dude, I would say from like a year into me starting going to church is when my deconstruction actually started of it. And it's now just been in the past year and a half where I've finally been able to say, I just don't believe certain things anymore.
Sure.
And let's see what needs to happen here going forward that I do believe that help me stay in my true self. Because a lot of what I believed in those early days were more of like, I'm told I need to believe this because if I don't, I'm going to get ostracized.
Yeah.
And so, well, even though I can sense way, way, way deep down in myself that this isn't right, like I don't think gay people go to a hell, let alone that I don't believe in a hell,
Right.
not at least a physical place. That doesn't seem right to me, but I guess that's what all my friends believe. That's what this pastor believes. So I guess I just need to like pretend that I believe it and get really passionate about it.
Sure.
But it's like, fuck.
It's heavy, man.
It's exhausting.
It is. It's a lot to wear, like, I don't know, clothes or a cloak that really isn't yours.
No.
It's a lot to ask.
It is.
What I sense from you looking back is you are not angry at the past. I don't feel it from you at all.
I used to be.
Yeah.
A lot.
Right.
I used to be. And I mean, in a lot of the work, and this is profiled in the record too, it's like a lot of the work has been, I used to get angry. Every time I say that, I think about, I used to be angry young man, be hiding me head in the sand.
Because
Beatles.
you're you. You made
Yeah,
the song.
I immediately think of the Beatles. But no, I used to get angry at my parents for, struggling with what they struggled with. And it's just like, we didn't have the same tools that we have now when it comes to therapy and psychology and all this
Sure.
stuff. It's very different.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, it feels like, is fairly recent for people to talk about and think about
Yeah.
and be open with.
Very
it
much
really
so.
is still new for so many folks.
Very, very, very much so.
So in Miles of Truth, the reprise.
Yes.
And we're gonna do the track by track as another feature, of course. But in Miles of Truth, there is a line where, and I feel like I can understand, like anybody, a fair amount of your journey, but there's a level to it and a lyric in Miles of Truth, the reprise, where it's so gutting, and particularly when you hear it in this spare way, where it's you in the acoustic guitar, kind of reminded me of like Springsteen doing Born to Run just on the 12-string versus his full band power version. And so there's the lyric where fathers don't tell their sons they wish they'd never been born at all, that sort of thing. That was one where I'm like, that is something I just, it's a harrowing thought. Did you question putting that into the tune, putting that into the world?
For a split second, and then I realized, well, I can go the rest of my life and hide certain things that happened to me, or I can put this stuff out there and expose things, not to harm anybody, but to just simply say like, yeah, this happened, and I'm probably not the only one. And I look back at that now, and it doesn't hit me the same way, obviously, as it did then.
Sure.
I can take that and continue the pattern, or really do the hard fucking work of uncovering my own stuff and realizing that, again, anything that anyone else says has nothing to do with me. Truly. Has nothing to do with me. They are only projecting their own feelings, their own experiences, their own thoughts and opinions and beliefs onto someone else. Even if it means me saying, God, Adam, I just really love you. That's about me. It's like me, I'm telling myself that like, I have an affinity for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not you. I can't live out of that story anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of that song is about that. I mean, both Miles of Truths on the record are just talking about like, I can't live out of false stories anymore. I can't live out of false ways of being in the world, going through it, kicking and screaming, living like a victim at all times or a victim in waiting. And this is crazy. I used to go where I thought I was safe, where I didn't have to build a wall. Where fathers don't tell the sons that they wish they'd never been born at all. And then a poison rain came pounding out pain and killed all I knew. Another sign just to point me home to these miles and miles of truth.
When I hear you talk about even something that tough with your father, you don't seem to have judgment about on him, judgment on him for that. It doesn't. I don't feel that from you.
I used to.
Yeah.
It's just more of like a deep, deep sadness for him where I go, what on earth happened to you to where that's something that would come out of your mouth?
Sure.
And it's like, that stuff is not intrinsic.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Somebody taught him how to say something like that.
Yeah.
I just think that when those types of things fly out of people's mouths, which, I mean, sadly, I've said similar things to people, that's really not about them.
Yeah.
That's about my own state of being. And it's like, well, okay, the more that I can be awakened to that very fact helps me free myself from those old stories where it's like, that's not really me, man. That's just old shit being passed down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. With the album having an intro song, the lyrics that kind of sometimes repeat or call back to different things, and then Miles of Truth having the reprise, which is a very different version. It's almost like, to me, the way Born in the USA, Springsteen, there's the regular like big band full in your face version, then he has this 12-string vocal acoustic version, and they're the same lyrics, but they don't feel like they're the same.
Yeah.
Is this something you notice with music where like you can sneak in some heavy lyrics into a fun like Parliament feeling jam,
Right?
And you have.
Yes. Yeah. Are you asking like?
I guess what I want to know is like to put serious lyrics or heavy lyrics into a fun sounding song. Is that an odd juxtaposition, or does it feel natural to you?
It feels natural to me. I think that, I mean, there are a zillion Motown songs that do this.
Yeah.
Zillions of them.
Yeah.
Where it's just this upbeat, happy thing about somebody breaking your heart and cheating on you. I mean, I can't think of enough Temptation songs or Four Top songs where it's just like, your heart's breaking and, you know, you're leaving me and all this stuff. And, you know, ain't too proud to beg, sweet darling. Please don't leave me, girl. Don't you go. It's like, that's heart wrenching, but it's like, it's surrounded by this really upbeat, up-tempo, you know, pop thing.
Yeah.
At least that's what pop was, or part of pop was in the 60s. But I mean, to reference my songs. So like Miles of Truth, I wrote that song originally as the acoustic version.
Oh, that's the original.
That at least that vibe
in some
was
way,
the original version.
Wow. Okay.
I had about 8 or 9 verses for that whole thing that I finally whittled them down.
Wow.
And I was like, you know, I don't want the whole record to be that. I want that to be something that is like, it took me a long time to figure out how to get that song to work. And I mean, literally, I just was like, what if I did like, what would Sly Stone do here? And that's how the song came out, the first one. But I was like, there's something really special about the way that the lyrics, my delivery, all that stuff falls in doing this more stripped down acoustic version of a song that if you hadn't heard the other version, if you hadn't heard the acoustic version, you'd be like, man, that's just a funky, you know, in your face kind of thing. I really love that juxtaposition because to me, it's like, there's more than one way to tell the same story.
Yeah.
You know? And that doesn't mean that one way is better or worse than the other. It just means that you may be able to see the globe from different perspectives.
Sure.
You know?
It works on another level, too, where the reprise of Miles of Truth really sets you up for the sort of closing benediction of Devil's Table.
Yes.
Like you're going a particular way.
Yes.
The whole record really has an arc to it of some sort. Is it the arc you imagined before you made it? Did you
Absolutely.
imagine? It is.
I did. It is. And I didn't have like a specific, like I didn't say, these are the songs, the way this is going to be up front, because I didn't have the songs yet. But as they appeared, it was like, oh, that's the song that's going to go here.
You're getting the puzzle pieces.
I remember when I wrote Devil's Table, and it was like, this is going to end the record. Period. Now I just want to figure out, and again, a lot of this is subconscious. It was just like, so what? I think at that time when I wrote that song, I had maybe the first 3 songs I had done. I had recorded Garden, I'd recorded I Believe in Our Love and Miles of Truth. And I was like, so what's going to come in between here to get to this point? Because I really want all of these. And it just kind of made sense. I distinctly remember the first time I listened down to rough mixes of the whole record and had this visceral reaction. Originally, I had switched What They're Missing and Miles of Truth, where What They're Missing came right before Devil's Table, and I went, that's not right. I like this. As you said, it needs to be an arc. It doesn't need to be an arc, and there's this little peak at the end of it, and then we go right back down. It's like, no. This needs to be an in breath and an out breath. Like, let's do this. And man, it hit. It really hit.
It hits, man.
It hits me, man.
What's your relationship with sad music like? Like, people use that word to mean all sorts of different things, but if you listen to something that is, I'll do air quotes, sad, do you actually feel sad, or are you like, well, hey, somebody else feels these things?
Oh, man.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
There's a world where it can work both ways, I guess.
I tend to see it more as melancholic than sad.
Yeah.
People talk about, like, I don't know, I don't want to name artists specifically, but people talk about certain music being sad or God forbid they say it's emo. And there is actually emo music out there, but like that, I mean, no offense, but like that doesn't seem like really actual sad music to me. It just seems like, okay, let's just throw some emotions on the page and get a bunch of guys in a room and scream for a while.
Yeah.
It's like sad music to me can be like Marvin Gaye's version of Yesterday. I mean, it's just gut wrenching, but it's so groovy and funky and atmospheric and really wonderful all at the same time. And it's like, I don't really care what it is as long as I believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's why I can listen to what some people would say are really sad or dark, and I don't mean dark and like violent. I mean like dark and really. One of my favorite records of all time is April by Sun Kill Moon, which is this beautiful. God, man, it's one of the most gorgeous records I've ever heard in my life.
Cool.
Where the whole record in many ways chronicles Mark Kozlik, the artist, the main guy in Sun Kill Moon, his experience of losing his best friend, this woman, to cancer. And what that was like. And he just sort of chronicles it through there and just lost love and all this stuff. And it's done with such grace and honesty and everything that I'm like, I've come back to that record a million times.
Yeah.
And it's about some of the most sad, gut-wrenching things anybody could go through. But it's like, I believe everything you say on here, man. Everything.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Again, I don't care what it is. If I believe what you're saying, I'll listen to you a million times.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I always have a taste for. There are many things out there that people are honest that I don't necessarily have a taste for.
Sure.
But it's like if I find them and I really relate to it sonically and lyrically, I'm like, phew, man, I'm in. Bring it to me.
Yeah.
Here we are.
How do you like to, when you're going to consume a record that you're excited about, when you're going to listen to it for the first time, and some maybe you've been waiting on for a minute, how do you prefer to listen?
I like to be by myself in a pretty dark room, laying down with headphones on.
Does this seem like a good way for people to listen to Frontiers? Would
Absolutely.
you recommend this?
That's what I would hope.
Yeah.
I want this record to be the equivalent of someone sitting down, watching a film, reading a book. It's an experience. Our culture is so, in many ways, is designed for little short snippets of stuff. We get likes and comments, and we get these little hits when we get on our social media. I certainly do. And I'm learning that, that's kind of my monkey brain at work. Like that guy served a purpose for a while, but like he needs to calm down, and he's ready to calm down.
Yeah.
I want something that's a little bit more expansive that I can sort of get sucked into and be surrounded by, rather than just like popping a pill real quick. So, I mean, metaphorically, I want longer, more meditative experiences when it comes to listening to music. I don't need to have my brains blown out with it. Doesn't mean that it can't be energetic, but like, I don't know of too many artists in the mainstream, at least, that are newer artists that are doing stuff like this. It's much more about the numbers game, the Spotify playlist game, the YouTube game. It's like, my music doesn't really fit for that stuff.
Right.
I'm grateful if somebody wants to put it on something, but it's like, nah.
It's not what you made it for.
It's not what I made it for.
Right.
I made it for myself. I also made it to help people who are struggling or have struggled with the same things that I've struggled with or experienced some of the things that I've experienced, and to also just have an experience like this, to be able to sit down in a quiet room, listen to it, or another way I would love to listen to it, it would be to get in a room full of people and just make it an event. Like, again, like going to see a movie. It's like, let's just sit like people used to do in the 60s. We're all getting together at so-and-so's house at 8 o'clock tomorrow night to listen to the White Album. Like people
that
did
sounds
that.
amazing.
You know,
Yeah.
people did that. Crap, man. Now it's like music is so personalized and homogenized and separate that it's like, well, this is my music.
Yeah.
You know, this is your music. That's what you're into. And this is mine. And I've got it on my phone and I'm going to listen to it in my earbuds. It's like, I thought this was supposed to be enjoyed by other people.
Sure.
Like a communal thing. And I would love that. I would love to get a group of, 20, 25, 30 people in a room, have food, make it an event, and just sit with it. I love that.
I feel like that world is coming.
I hope.
I feel like that's gonna happen, man. If other people connect to it, 1% as much as I have, then I think it's gonna really I don't know, be a powerful thing for folks. But like you're saying, it's not even what you made it for. You made a record that you yourself believe in and love. And hey, man, I'm going to jump on board and say I'm into it too. Dustin Ransom, Frontiers is the album. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, man. And I just want to say one little last thing with this too. And I kind of reiterated this point. Like, one of the biggest things that I learned in making this record and just how to be a creative person in the world we live in is whatever I say, not only does it need to resonate deeply with me, but my ultimate hope is that it resonates with you. Like, I want music to be something that serves other people. I want music to be something that it was to me, which was a refuge, a safe place, a place of empathy. When I hear something, I go, man, I understand that. Even if I've never experienced it directly or exactly the same way, it's like, I get it. And that's what I hope. I hope when anybody hears this record, there are moments where they go, whew, yeah, me too. Yep, that's it.
Well, there you have it, folks. As you listen to Frontiers by Dustin Ransom and experience that moment, it is as the artist intended.